Welcome back to another episode of Time to Thrive, the podcast where healing meets purpose and bold women rise. I'm your host, Marjorie. And today's guest is a powerhouse in the mental health space, Jessica Smith. Jessica is a writer, mental health advocate, and social entrepreneur based in Baltimore, Maryland. She's the founder and executive director of the Mental Health Emergency Fund, a nonprofit breaking financial barriers for those who need mental health support but can't afford it. Since launching, Jessica has screened over 400 individuals for anxiety and depression and has poured nearly $40,000 into her community. She's also a certified youth mental health first aid instructor, training adults across the country to recognize mental health struggles in youth. Her work is changing lives and her mission is as bold as her voice. Get ready for an honest and inspiring conversation because with Jessica Smith, it's truly time to thrive. Hey, Jessica, welcome back to the show. I'm so glad that you were able to join me today. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Thank you so much for having me, Marjorie.
Yes, I'm super excited. Jessica, your work is truly inspiring. Mental health is such an essential part of our well-being. Yet so many people find, struggling to get the help that they need, and especially in times of crisis. What you're doing with the Mental Health Emergency Fund is not just providing financial assistance, it's providing hope, dignity, and a lifeline for those who feel like they have nowhere to turn. But before we dive deeper into your organization and the impact it's making, I love to take a step back and talk about your personal journey.
Oh, girl, how much time do we have? It's a long story filled with highs and lows. I would say ever since I was a kid, I probably always had some form of performance anxiety. I used to run track and get sick to my stomach before every single
Mhm.
meet. I just didn't know that that's what it was. I didn't know it was performance anxiety. I did fine in the classroom. I excelled in school. Didn't have any trouble like taking tests or anything. But that performance anxiety really came back when I had my first big girl job. And I kind of dealt with imposter syndrome. So I was
Mhm.
working at an organization where I helped women start and grow their businesses. And so I was like a business coach.
Mhm. Oh,
Um,
wow.
meanwhile, meanwhile, I didn't have a business of my own. And so there was just a lot of imposter syndrome, like getting in front of a crowd and like teaching about business and me not having a business of my own. Um, I definitely dealt with that imposter syndrome and that anxiety started to come up during those trainings. But also before then, like right before then, I had gotten into it wasn't a car accident, but it was a car scare that I ended up having like PTSD months later. And so really kind of like shook me up and I had long commutes with this job and so every
Mhm.
day I was kind of facing my triggers of driving when I didn't really want to be driving and everything kind of came to a head about 2.5 years into that role where I just got burnt out. Honestly, I was doing everything for everybody. I was working at a small nonprofit. I was also serving with my church, just pouring out, doing for everyone else, and not really taking care of my own needs. And so it got to a point where I was getting like debilitating headaches pulling up to work, and they just were not stopping. And I was like, you know what? I think that this job has to go. Like I decided
Okay.
to enlist in therapy probably like maybe a few months beforehand. So I was already like talking it out with the therapist before I made that decision. And I decided
Mhm.
to make the decision to quit that role. And fortunately, I had an emergency fund. So I was saving for a rainy day. I knew that my
Okay.
mental health was in a state where I might need just like a few months to just regroup before getting another job, and I ended up being out of work for a whole year. So I called that my mental health sabbatical, where I really focused on therapy, focused on meditation and prayer and all these things. And once I finally got back on my feet, is when I decided that I wanted to start an organization to help others who are going through what I went through.
Oh, wow. So that is an amazing story. I love how, you took your own journey and you made it into something that can help others. Especially, I liked when you talked about the fund. You know, you had a little nest egg because you realized that the job was detrimental to your mental health.
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't have that luxury. They don't have that luxury to, have something to fall back on in their face to force the trauma because they're kind of living in scarcity. And I just feel like that's so awesome. That's so awesome. And I think you, with the organization that you're doing and, making mental health accessible to others, that's amazing because, like I said, not a lot of people have the luxury to fall back on something and they have
Exactly.
to keep doing it because of their external circumstances. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. What was the defining moment that made you realize this was needed? And how was your organization made an impact so far?
Yeah, I would say my own story of like looking for my own therapist, and coming across people who weren't like super well suited for me,
Mhm.
and just knowing that I wanted to create a resource that helped people find therapists. So we do have a therapy directory. We have about 60 plus people right now of people of color
Oh, that's
in our
amazing.
therapy directory. Yes, and then we've made a great impact so far. So this year will make 4 years. We've been able to screen over 400 people for anxiety and depression. We
Wow.
have been able to give away $40,000 in mental health support to the community. And, a lot of times when people are sharing their stories, it's their very first time seeking help. And so we're really kind of like
Mhm.
sometimes a person's first step in saying, you know what, I need help.
And I love that because not everyone is ready to confess or identify that they need help. So, kind of just creating a safe place, um, and in making individuals feel safe to come to you and, and creating that safe place because they're already at rock bottom when they're reaching out for help. So, I love that. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the stories that we read. People are really going through hard times. Every single round
Mhm.
of applications where we read the applications, people are really struggling, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, what do you see as the biggest barriers to accessible, affordable, and immediate mental health care? And how is your organization working to address them?
Yeah, honestly, I think you said it in the question. That affordability piece is probably the biggest
Mhm.
barrier. People just don't have the finances to be able to access care, and that's where we come in by giving them those stipends so that they can, meet with the provider, or if they already have a provider, continue on with them. Because a lot of times people have, they already have a therapist, but they've, taken a pause because they can't afford any more sessions. And so we enable them to continue with their therapist. In terms of the like accessibility piece, that's where the therapy directory comes in, where we want to make it accessible and show black and brown faces. Like these are the people we vetted; they're part of our community, and we also like work with our therapists to give our stipend recipients a discount for out of pocket care. Some of them do have some of them do have insurance, but others of them do not. And so that out of pocket costs can be like really high.
I can imagine. I can imagine because I know the range can be very high. They can start out, there's some, $80, there's some $150 per session. It just really depends. I love that. I love that. And this is not, one of our formal questions, but I'm just curious. Do you have any testimonials that stuck with you, that inspired you, when you received your applications?
Yeah, for sure. We do ask for testimonials for the people who have gone through the process and, have received the stipends. We have a testimonial page on our website. So I definitely pull from those sometimes when I'm like applying for grants and things. But yeah, I mean, people have said that, it's been life saving. People have said that, they were really down at the end of their rope and this came at the perfect time. People have said that now they know that they need to have a fund like this for when emergencies happen, that it's helped them to start saving again, things like that. So those testimonials are really like coming to mind in terms of like being, a really big part of the work.
That's incredible. I love that. I love that. And many people don't realize how expensive mental health treatment can be, like we were just talking about. In your experience, what financial challenges are people facing when seeking urgent care, and how does that fund help ease that burden?
Yeah, so a lot of times people are really wrestling with having enough money to put food on the table, unfortunately. Like they can't pay for their groceries. A lot of people can't pay for their rent. They're facing eviction. A lot of people, they might be on medication and they can't afford the medication that they need to be well.
Mhm.
So really, really basic needs. Some people don't have enough money for transportation, even if it's just the bus, like that's how low they are on funds. And it's really disheartening because, we wish we could give more. Our stipends that we give are $500 each. But, we wish we could give a lot more to these people because we know that once they use it, it's going to run out very quickly. And so we do have a budgeting tool that we give them. I'm not sure if they ever utilize it, but I do have a spreadsheet that they can help kind of, start to budget out their expenses. But yeah, people are really facing really hard times.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I love the budget tool that you provide. That is awesome. I'm praying that you're able to, one day provide more than $500, but know that it's that's a lot to begin with, but the need is so great
Yeah.
for people that need help with mental health. But that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, the next question I have is, as someone deeply involved in this work as yourself, how do you protect your own mental health while helping others through some of their hardest moments?
Yeah, great question. I'm not perfect at it. Honestly, I'm human. So, sometimes, the work does get heavy, especially when
Mhm.
the day that we select people and we're reading through all those applications and things, like it is pretty heavy. But I try to make sure that I'm keeping my mental health first and foremost. I have a therapist. I actually just had therapy earlier today. Um, I
Awesome.
I have a therapist. I regularly, set, strict boundaries with whatever it is that I'm doing. Let's say I have this podcast, then I might have something else later. I'll make sure I don't like
Mhm.
double book myself, or not double book, but like book things back to back. So I have some just
Mhm.
breathing room to make sure that I am as present as possible going into my meetings, going into anything that I have, honestly. So I just try to protect my time, make sure that I'm mindfully moving through the day. Make sure that, if something really gets heavy on my heart, I'm praying about it or I'm journaling about it. And, again, taking it to either friends or definitely my therapist and, getting other perspectives on it. But I think over the years I've done a better job of, having those boundaries and being able to kind of not take the work home, so to speak. But it can be difficult because sometimes some stories really stick with you, especially if you have to turn someone down. You're wondering, like, where are they now? Are they still
Yeah.
struggling? Are they struggling with homelessness? I wish I could have helped them, type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think you really dropped some gems in your response that you said, because I know in society today, like hustle culture is glorified. Like the more the better, the more the better. But we don't realize how we can overextend ourselves sometimes, and it leads to burnout. And a lot of people don't know that burnout is a real thing. They kind of just see it as they're feeling tired or exhausted, but that could be a part of mental health. But I'm so glad that, you have the self-awareness and you incorporate um praying and journaling, kind of using those coping skills to, kind of just pour back into yourself because in this business, you're pouring out to a lot of people. So that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who has dealt with burnout myself, I know the
Mhm.
signs within my body. I know the signs, and so I do as much as possible to stay away from getting to that breaking point.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I love that you're very open about that because not a lot of people are open about mental health or just saying that they want help.
Hmm.
That's amazing. There's still so much stigma around asking for financial help, especially when it comes to mental health. How do you encourage people to reach out without shame or guilt?
Hmm. The interesting thing is that people just come to us, like we don't have to do like big calls for applications or anything. When people see that, we are offering these $500 stipends for their mental health, they are quick to apply. I will say that sometimes people don't put a lot of information of their personal story because we do ask for a narrative piece in the application. But some people literally pour their hearts out and tell us everything.
Mhm.
And so um, I think the way that we have made the application, it's not a thing where because nobody really else would know that someone is applying, they can just apply for it and that'll be it. So there isn't as much stigma to asking for help because I think maybe for one, like because we've done so many rounds of it, people are kind of used to seeing us promote it. It's like, oh, they're
Mhm.
they're offering support again. Let me apply. Let me apply. We've had people who have applied like at least 3 times before. So um, I think that just just using social media these days has helped to destigmatize, and I think the fact that like we put black faces on our on our marketing flyers and things, it's like, oh, I can see myself in that, like
Mhm.
they are looking out for me, and that makes them probably more willing to apply.
And I love that. I love that. I love that you represent for the culture. That's a huge thing because like I said, it's kind of we can't relate to everyone. Can I just say that? Like we cannot relate to everyone. But, providing access to more providers, providing more resources and like you said, to people like us. That's amazing, sis. That really is. That's awesome. What is your vision for the Mental Health Emergency Fund in the next few years? What impact do you hope to create on a larger scale?
Yeah, so right now we are solely in Baltimore, but I would love to see us cover the full DMV. For people who are not familiar, that's DC, Maryland, and Virginia, to be able to provide services all across this DC metro area. I would love to hire more like part-time staff, for me to be on full salary again, and help, I would say, up to 1,000, 1,000 people really be able to access care. That includes getting more grants, getting more sponsorships, having more people know about us, and maybe even having the therapists in the directory reduce the cost per session so that people are able to extend that $500 stipend for even longer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I stand in agreement with that prayer. I really hope, I can't wait. Actually, I don't hope. I can't wait to see how it all unfolds.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And this is the closing question. For those listening who want to support your mission, how can they get involved, donate, or help spread awareness?
Yeah, there's plenty of ways to get involved. In terms of donating, we give through we receive donations through an app called Give Butter. So that page is givebutter.com/slash MHEF. Again, that's givebutter.com/MHEF. You can definitely follow us on Instagram. We are Mental Health Emergency Fund on Instagram, and that's our website as well, www.mentalhealthemergencyfund.org. Also, if someone has lived experience with mental health challenges or they kind of want to share their story, I invite them to come on my podcast. So I have a podcast as well. It's called the Mental Health Emergency Fund Podcast, not a creative name or anything. But yeah, they can come on our podcast. I started it by just interviewing therapists to kind of make therapy more relatable, but then I decided I also wanted to hear the other side of that. I wanted to hear people's personal stories, their lived experience. So that's always a great way for people to advocate. I would say share our posts. That's a great way to advocate as well, spread awareness. And then always when we have our
Yes.
stipend applications open, share, 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 because most of the time the people who apply are third degree connections, which means I don't know them, but someone that I know knows them. So that's the best way to help our cause.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that. And yes, to my viewers, Mental Health Emergency Fund podcast is amazing. And I love that she kind of just breaks the barriers and removes the stigma in her stories. So that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for coming to the show today. It was a pleasure getting to speak with you today. I'm so honored to have you on, and happy Women's History Month.
Thank you, Marjorie. Happy Women's History Month to you as well. It was a pleasure being on, and I'm grateful for your platform, and I hope that it continues to thrive.
Thank you. Thank you. Alrighty. Well, until next time.
All right, bye bye.